In 1996, the company that I was working for was in the waste hauling and recycling industry. And the owners of that company had decided to sell it to a multinational. I was not interested in becoming a mid-level manager in a multinational after having spent a few years at the helm of this growing private company. So at that time, we were the largest independent waste hauler and recycler in the city of Philadelphia. We had contracts with the city and with a lot of other big municipal and commercial clients. So my late partner, Rick Altair, he worked in the company doing all of the welding and fabrication and containers. And he came to me and said, I think we ought to go into the compactor business because there's really nobody good out there doing it. I said, okay, let's do it. So we did. That's how it all began. It was a small lifestyle kind of business where we thought we'd like to go to a nice part-time job, 40 hours a week, and control our own destiny. And
a part-time job,
exactly.
40 hours a week.
The hauling business is brutal.
Yeah.
The hauling business is at least 6 days a week, if not 7, and it's 12, 14-hour days. This seemed like a nice change. Now, over the years, we've developed a client base that operates 24/7. And so we have some presence happening at all times, 24/7. But the business is definitely not as demanding as the hauling business. And the one thing that I swore when I got out of the hauling business was that I would never run trucks again. It's challenging. And, I give props to anybody who has drivers and trucks on the road. It's a very challenging lifestyle. We have all mid-duty, no heavy-duty trucks. We don't have to handle all the interstate fuel taxes. There's just a lot of regulatory and compliance issues, and then it's hard to find good drivers. So swore off the trucking industry and went into the maintenance and service industry, which is what we really did back in 96. We provided compactor sales and service to the waste industry, and a lot of our clients were other waste haulers. So rather than internalizing those services for their clients, they would farm them out to us. So we got started doing that, and it was slow growth, but we enjoyed what we were doing. I actually didn't work here in the business full time. I did consulting for a waste paper broker while my late partner got this off the ground. There were 3 of us in the business at the time. And in 1998, a gentleman showed up on our doorstep who had found us in the Yellow Pages, said, I think I'm dying and I don't have anyone to take over my company. Would you be interested in buying it?
Wow.
So we went back and forth with him a few times, and he had a couple of other interested buyers who would have paid him cash, and we didn't have the cash at the time. He asked us for $25,000 to buy his business, and you would have thought he wanted $25 million because that's where we were at that point in our company. But he liked us. Mm-hmm. He said, you guys have computers. Mm-hmm. And back then, not all mechanic businesses had computers on every desk.
Yeah.
And he said, you're forward thinking, and I have a client that really needs somebody like you. And we said, oh, who's that client? And he said, well, it's Wawa. Anybody who's from...
The convenience store.
Correct. Anybody who's from the Mid-Atlantic area or has spent any time in the Mid-Atlantic and now recently Florida knows Wawa. Wawa is a provider of convenience, fresh food, and fuel. And they have about 900 locations today.
900.
Yes, but at the time, they had about 400 back in the 1990s. They are opening 60 to 65 stores a year.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Up and down the East Coast, they kind of leapfrog from Virginia to Florida, but then they go from Virginia north and up to North Jersey, and they are, actively growing their business and varying their business model.
And what do you do for Wawa?
So back then, what this gentleman Ted Peterson did for them was he sold them tiny little machines in the back room that made cardboard bales. And so that was pretty progressive. Companies weren't really doing a whole lot of recycling, especially small convenience retailers. But Wawa got into recycling in the 80s. And so I didn't even know as a hauler that Wawa had these little machines in the back room, because most companies that had baling and compacting equipment were like Home Depot or Acme supermarkets, big generators of waste with big equipment outside. So when this gentleman said that
And these are 24/7 operating stores, correct?
Correct. But this was right at the advent of fuel for Wawa. They had just started getting into fuel. They had barely begun to open stores in Virginia. So they were a completely different company back then. So they had these little machines that handled small volumes of what's convenience store trash, plastics and packaging and cardboard. But their food service offer had really started to grow. And they realized that their trash was quickly outstretching their capacity in these little machines. So a friendship was born. We worked with them to help them build their systems to handle the volume they were putting through their stores. We gave them advice on the current trends in the market and how to reuse existing equipment instead of investing in all new. And after about 2 years of doing that, they approached us and said, we don't have anybody on staff full time who knows anything about trash, and we would really like you to consult for us. So we began what was a 1-year relationship to help them understand their trash and teach someone inside to take over what we do. That's nearly 20 years ago. We still partner with them today.
That's pretty staggering. 900 stores. How do you even begin to manage the waste of 900 stores?
You begin with one. We look at ourselves as problem solvers. We are a company that loves a challenge. We love to create solutions for our clients. I like to tell people that many a time for Wawa, we've had to fit ships in bottles where, we're given a tiny little space with a small opening, and we have to take machines and cut them apart and reassemble them back inside. So that's what we like to do. We like to create neat spaces and efficient flows of materials. And in creating efficiency, we reduce waste, because waste is not just garbage. Waste is not just what you put at the curb one night a week and have it collected.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you this. I mean, there was a day when a trash truck would show up twice a week and just haul whatever away. Now trash is separated.
Right. And you have...
How many different units is it separated into now?
Depends on the generator. Depends on the geography. But when I say waste isn't just trash, I mean people waste labor and other resources all day long. They waste fuel. We weigh in on a lot of those things as well, with all of our clients. So to answer your question, there's solid waste, which is what you put out at your curb twice a week. There is, and what is generated by a commercial business, it's municipal solid waste. It's your average everyday trash. Within that, a lot of items are recyclable, but not all of them.
Such as
bottles, cans, paper, cardboard. Those are the low-hanging fruit of sustainability. Those are the easy ones to capture. But there are a lot of other things in there that are recyclable that nobody's interested in recycling because of the logistics around collecting them. And so packaging.
Such as?
Packaging. Okay. Plastic packaging. Plastic bags and films. Those are a recycler's nightmare, because in today's society, everyone has been trained to put their trash out with their recycling in a single stream. So the single stream recycling is the one bucket for everything. Unfortunately, the education hasn't been there in the past 10 years to help the consumer understand what everything looks like in single stream. The other piece of this is that foreign markets used to be a lot more accepting of high volumes of contamination in the loads that they were receiving from the US markets. And since that time, more recently, say in the last 2 years, a lot of foreign countries that had been accepting high volumes of waste paper or mixed recyclables or commingled plastics and bottles and cans from the US have stopped accepting it because the contamination levels got to be so high that there wasn't enough value in the material. So they stopped accepting the material, and now this trickle-down effect is making its way back to Joe homeowner, who doesn't know that they don't want him to put plastic bags in his recycling anymore. So the big thing that's happening now, there's a two-pronged approach that the industry is taking. One is education, training. Make sure that people understand what they can and can't recycle in their market. So just because something has a recycling symbol on it, it is recyclable, but that doesn't mean your local recycler wants it in your stream. That's the big issue. The other issue is packaging. So product manufacturers take all these little parts that go with whatever toy you're buying Susie for Christmas, and the parts are each put in separate individual plastic bags, and then they're zip tied together, and then all of that is put in a big plastic thing that you cut your hand open trying to open, and then that's put in some sort of a wax cardboard box, and then it has a label on it. So all of that packaging makes for easier shipping, or it makes for quality control for the manufacturer, whatever things that might incent people to buy
merchandising.
Their merchandise, right? For merchandising, whatever it might be. So those folks are all generating it, and they're benefiting from that packaging in some fashion, but the consumer is left literally holding the bag. They have no idea what to do with this stuff. So where do they put it? They either put it in the trash or they put it in the recycling, because they are hopeful that it will be recycled. Everybody's a hopeful recycler.
I do that.
Absolutely.
I put stuff in my recycle bin that I hope is acceptable.
Exactly. Don't we all? We live in this fantasy world that if I put it in that bin, there's a chance it'll get recycled. And if I put it in the trash, no chance at all.
So you went from hauling to recycling, which is a big leap. And then it's not just recycling. There's a million different little islands in recycling world.
Yes.
And that's separating all these elements.
Right.
And multi-purposing the trash. Are things just brought to landfills anymore?
Yes. And it really depends on where you live.
Mm-hmm.
So most states have a plan, some sort of a plan for where trash is supposed to go, or in the greater good of their citizens, they come up with some scheme, and I don't mean that negatively, but whatever that plan is. And depending on the availability of landfill space, in your proximity, you'll find incinerators, trash to steam plants where they're capturing the energy. In other areas, you find landfills. You see a lot of times you drive by a golf course and you can tell it used to be a landfill just because of the way the hills roll.
Okay.
Now you have the organic matter. Organic matter is what drives the methane. And
that was my next question. Food scraps.
Right.
You're dealing with a restaurant that
right.
throws out tons and tons of food scraps.
Exactly. There's two ways to look at it. There's edibles and inedibles. Edible material should be repurposed, a beneficial reuse. You should feed hungry people with edible food. But there is a lot of organic material in the waste stream that is inedible. So the next step in the process is, okay, it's inedible by humans. Is it edible by animals? And then the next step is, can we turn it into another beneficial reuse? Can energy be made from it? When you think about it, what is food? Food is calories. What are calories? Calories are energy. Is there a way to capture energy? And there's a lot of technology in the marketplace coming online. There's composting. Composting is simple and as old as man.
Yeah.
And we put the organic scraps back into the earth and we create soil from which we can grow new food. So there's a farmer in Royersford, Pennsylvania, who we've worked with for many, many years. And his concept was simple. He had 2 acres of land near his home. And he was an attorney who decided he wanted to be a farmer. So he retired from his legal practice and set up a farm called 2 Particular Acres. And reached out to all of his neighbors and said, I'm going to be composting on my farm. And I know what everybody thinks about composting is going to create a lot of odors. So let's have the conversation now, not after I start the process and you come in and try to shut me down. He went to the DEP, he got all the proper permits and that sort of thing. And what he makes is amended soils. He makes nutrient-rich soils from what other people consider waste. And Wawa happens to be one of his biggest clients. And
so he's a compost farm.
He's a compost farm.
But he's not growing anything there.
He does grow some garlic and some other things.
Okay.
But
his product
is compost. He sells this engineered soil that's designed for different use, mulches, things like that, for if you say I want a top dressing that for a particular kind of grass or a garden, if I need a mulch for this or that, you give him the specification and he'll make and the soil is black and rich and dense, and a lot of that soil is made from Wawa's coffee grounds, because when you think about how many pots of coffee Wawa brews in a day.
Yeah, sure.
And so currently at about 140 Wawa stores, we have a program in place that we were fortunate to be able to participate in developing this program. And composters like this fella and others come and they collect these coffee grounds in bulk from the stores to the tune of 1,000 pounds per week per store. 2 tons per store per month of coffee grounds and filters that are no longer being wasted. They're being used as a raw material for a new product.
So Wawa is happy to have these things removed.
Wawa pays to have them removed. I want to give them all their due.
Yeah.
Wawa pays to have these removed because there's a logistics cost, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying to you previously. There's 2 components. There's disposal and there's logistics. So same with recycling. There may be a lot of value to someone in packaging, but the cost of collecting, 3 ounces of packaging at a time from 100 different locations is completely prohibitive to actually recycling that material. So, and that's why single stream was born, to reduce the logistics, the cost of the labor and the trucks and all of that, to collect it into a place to be recycled. So it's the same thing with the coffee grounds. There's a logistics cost. So even though there's value for the farmer, there's still a cost to the farmer, A, in collecting it, and B, he then has to process that into something he can sell. And there's a 8-week timeline to process it. It has to reach certain temperatures to where all of the pathogens are potentially eliminated, or the potential pathogens are eliminated, I should say. So there's a whole process that goes into that, and there's equipment that's involved and labor that's involved and that sort of thing. So there's still a cost to getting that from 140 Wawa stores to 1 location or 5 locations that are going to turn it into compost.
This would be considered the corporate headquarters?
Correct.
How many employees do you have on site here?
30.
30. And what is the scope, the number of people that you have nationwide? What would you say?
Employees, direct employees, it's not many. We're less than 40. So, yeah, You've simplified. Yeah, out of this location, we service 6 states out of this location.
Okay.
And then we have another location in Florida.
Yes.
Where we have 6 employees, and they handle the whole state of Florida. So,
that's sweet.
Yeah. So it's, technology is a wonderful thing. We don't have to be someplace physically to help solve problems there. So we have a client, a municipality in Arizona, that found us online and said, this is what we need help. And they reached out to us and they said, here's what's happening. We're not happy with our vendor and here's why, and we want to recycle and they won't let us and this and that. And can we just hire you to fix this for us? Sure. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So it all happens right here in Camden, New Jersey for the most part.
And you've been here almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years.
Tell me about that story.
So for 20 years, we operated out of our facility in Chester, Pennsylvania, quite happily. things started to change. We started to get a little too big for the facility. The neighborhood started to change in ways. I mean, the garbage business is not one that's ever invited to the best neighborhoods in town. We've always been very comfortable wherever we've worked and been part of the neighborhood. And the neighborhood we were in Chester began to change to where we no longer felt safe and felt comfortable. There had been some issues that would occur. We would come in after a weekend and find crime scene on our front door, crime scene tape, that kind of thing. And so, we have employees that sometimes go out at 1 or 2 in the morning with their trucks. And I felt like things were not getting better, and I was concerned for the safety of our employees. So between that and our growth, I started looking for someplace new. And looking at the demographic of our payroll, we actually had more employees who lived in New Jersey and commuted over the bridge to Pennsylvania than Pennsylvania employees. I started looking around and came across a building actually nearby in another town and reached out to the realtor. And the realtor said, that one just went under contract, but if you're willing to take a look, there's one in Camden that hasn't gone on the market yet. And my response to him was, I'm going to be jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire if I leave Chester to go to Camden, because Camden had a terrible reputation. But he convinced me that it was worth taking a look, that he felt that the building was ideal for our purposes, and he was right. And the neighborhood's wonderful, and the people have been extremely inviting. New Jersey welcomed us with open arms and was anxious to have our jobs. We pursued it, and it was one of those things where it was more money than we were prepared to spend, and it needed a lot of renovation, and what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And slowly but surely, all the perceived obstacles were removed to where it became clear that it was the right path. It was, everything just unfolded in front of us, and it wasn't really a choice at that point. It was, that's our new home. So it took us a while. A lot of work and renovation and what have you, but we've been happily settled here now for close to 2 years. And we have offices with a lot of light and windows, which was something we were lacking. And along the way, we made that acquisition that I mentioned and brought in a lot of new folks and are maxed out on space. But we're making it work. We're building more space, and we're happy we did it.
Tell me about the future of recycling.
If I had a crystal ball, I would gladly do that. However, I can give you my perspective over the 32 plus year career in the industry. It's cyclical. So we've seen really high highs and really low lows. But this time it's different. The climate for recycling has changed. It's no longer simply about profit. It is more about people pushing back on the manufacturers. There's some accountability, some responsibility happening. It seems to be driven by the millennial generation. They seem to be very interested in what goes into the products they consume, how those products are made. And so manufacturers, retailers are paying attention to that. So the calls that we're getting from clients are not just, hey, we want to save money by recycling. And not that they don't, and they should, because that's what's truly sustainable, is if it's affordable. Or we're getting calls through our help desk from customers who are questioning why we don't recycle, at some major retailer or convenience retailers like Wawa who do offer recycling. Customers want to know what can be recycled. So the customers are driving, our customers are driving the conversation. The consumer is driving the conversation. And so that's why it's different this time. The markets, do I think they'll rebound eventually? I think certain markets will rebound. I think that the days of throwing everything and the kitchen sink into the recycling bin are over. Yeah, I think there has to be some more conscious consumption happening, some more awareness, because the cost to the recyclers of disposing of those materials is prohibitive to actually processing. They spend millions of dollars on machinery to clean this material, and then there's no market for it if it's not cleaned well. There's an old saying, if it's not practical, it's not spiritual. Well, if it's not profitable, it's not sustainable for a for-profit business. It just stands to reason. And it's not that we are solely profit-driven. The way we've managed our business for the last 23 years has been that we've always taken care of the customer. We served our customers to the extent of sometimes of potentially losing money. But we take care of the customer, we solve their problems, we do the right thing, and the profits have always followed. But in order for us to sustain the livelihoods of 35 people or 36 people and this facility and the trucks and that sort of thing, we have to look at the bottom line. So in Florida, we are covering a territory in Florida, which is a very large state, bigger than the territory we cover in 6 states in the Northeast. Mm. I'm not sure how sustainable that is as our client base down there begins to grow. Not that we would pull out of Florida, but maybe we need a second location. Maybe we need to not serve the entire state out of one location. Mm. How sustainable is that in the long run? Yeah. What does that do to the labor force? How tired do they become? What does it do to the vehicles and the assets and that sort of thing? So we need to look at those things. So foundation, shoring up the foundation, taking a look at the things where we grew too quickly and things may not be completely stable. And so taking a step back, taking a look. The other thing that we're doing is we are rolling out a customer portal with a cloud-based application. I think that is of critical importance to a lot of people today. They want transparency to the information. I had a client say to me, I'm going to be working with another consultant on an unrelated project, but it would be really useful for them to have access to all the data that you gathered during the weight studies that you did for us, if you're willing to share it with them. And my response was, it doesn't belong to me. I don't own that data. You allowed me to gather that data at your place of business. You paid me to do that for you. It belongs to you. So if you would like me to share it with somebody, I would be happy to do that for you. So clients deserve that kind of transparency. So we want them to have the ability to look on their phone and find out, how much did it cost me for this? And when is this next service scheduled? And, send me a copy of this compliance report for the local municipality. And all those things should be readily accessible. Just because it's the garbage business and not a lot has changed in the last 50 years doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep up with the technology and standards of today and give the client the experience that they're used to having in other areas of their lives. So, a cloud-based application with a web portal for our customers.
Let's talk about Judy. You have been in a business, if I'm not mistaken, that is traditionally operated by men.
That's correct. You are not mistaken.
Tell me about that. Has that been difficult?
No, it hasn't been difficult. I'll be perfectly honest. And it may be that it hasn't been difficult because when I started in the business, I was naive to the idea that there was anything I couldn't do and that being a woman was a disadvantage of some sort. It doesn't mean it wasn't, and it doesn't mean that it isn't for many women today. That just wasn't my experience.
Yes.
I was raised by a single mother. Mm-hmm. And in 2009, I was given a Woman of Distinction Award by the Philadelphia Business Journal. And all of us who were honored with this award that year were asked to go up on stage and say a few words. In particular, choose one word that we would describe or use to explain the best thing our mothers ever gave us. And everybody went up and they talked about love, and they talked about, having generosity, and they went on with all of these things. And I went up and I said tenacity, and my mother's face dropped because I don't think she understood at first. Today she's pretty proud of it, but at the time I think she was hoping or expecting I was going to say love or generosity.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the greatest gift my mother ever gave me was tenacity. I don't take no for an answer. I don't believe there's any obstacle I can't overcome. And I don't believe that there's anything that just because I'm a woman, I can't do. And so, like I said, when I started out in the industry, I was 22 years old. And the truth, in hindsight, it wasn't just, as you nicely put it, that it was just largely men running the industry. It was a male-dominated industry, and I mean, this
it wasn't just populated with men; it was dominated.
This industry defines that. Construction used to define that, and I was fortunate not only that I was somewhat naive to the idea that that would be an issue, but also that I went to work for a couple of guys who thought it was kind of cool that I was a girl. And I say girl because I was young.
Yeah.
I should say woman, and I'm sure there are a lot of 22-year-old women who would resent me saying that I was a girl, but I was a girl when I was 22. I was naive.
Early on, you talked about a late partner.
I did.
You mentioned it 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
So, Rick Altair was perfectly human and beautifully flawed man that I encountered in my days working in the hauling industry. And we became fast friends. And then there was a point in time that we became involved. But more than that, he was the best partner that any person could ever have. And I often tell people who start businesses and consider having partners that a business partnership is a marriage. You have to know who you're getting involved with, and trust them with your life. And I have no regrets to this day about having Rick as my partner. So it was his idea to start the business. He was a welder. He had been a welder for 20 years. He was a quirky guy with a crooked smile, just the nicest guy you could ever meet. I never met a single person who said they didn't like him. He was honest and he was hardworking and easy to excite. There were times when, if people argued with him, whether they were customers or otherwise, he would go right back at them, and I would tell him, we're going to lose all our customers, you keep it up. But he was a great guy, and he helped grow this business to, the foundation that it was in the first 9 years. He became ill with leukemia and suffered terribly for a year and a half, fought a really good fight, and passed away. Through all of his illness, I thought to myself, I'm not sure I want to do this by myself. I had self-doubt. I don't know if I can do this by myself. I had a lot of fear. I also had a handful of really great people who were working in the company. They stepped up and they stepped in and they carried me and they carried this place. And I was, seriously toying with selling. I was seriously toying with going to teach full time. I went and got an MBA because I thought I'm going to need that if I want to teach at a 4-year college. I was teaching at a 2-year school at the time, and I thought, well, let me go get a master's degree and then I'll have a fallback if the business isn't going to pan out and if I just don't want to do this by myself anymore. A lot of vultures came out of the woodwork. There was a lot of talk that I wasn't going to make it. There were people who tried to buy me out cheap or just steal our work. A lot of people showed their colors, but a lot of people showed their colors in a really great way too. And mostly I found mine. In going to grad school, I met the most wonderful people, and they told me you already know how to do this. You're already doing it. Now it just has names and terminology.
Where did you go to grad school?
I went to grad school at St. Joe's in Philadelphia at the Hobbs School of Business. We had a great cohort, and we all believed in each other and helped each other. And the most important thing that I learned in grad school wasn't about international finance or, spreadsheets. It was about the fact that I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I thought I did all my life. I thought I had to have the answers, and I thought that that's what owning the business meant. And what I learned was that I can hire really smart people, and I can surround myself with them. And if I treat them well and give them something that they enjoy doing every day, they'll come to work and they'll share those smart answers with me and help me build this business. And that's what we've done.
You're all in with this, right?
Yeah.
There's no going back.
There's no going back. No, we're definitely only going forward, for sure. We have a great team, and they are the future of this company, not me. And I'm not saying I'm the past, I'm the present, but the future lies with this fabulous group of people who are coming up and doing what we do all day long. And I get a lot of compliments from clients on how great everybody here is to work with. And that means more to me than any bottom line.
Yeah. The color of your hair. Tell me about it.
You were the inspiration. I had always, or for many years, I should say, known that I didn't want to color my hair past a certain point. And that's just for me. I just decided I didn't want to do it. But I never knew how I was going to do it. I used to joke, I'm going to buzz my head. You got involved at one point with this group of people,
Silver Sisters.
The Silver Sisters, and you were doing some products repping or, things like that, doing some speaking at some conferences. And you were just passionate about it. And you shared with me how passionate these women were about it. And you said, yeah, check them out on Facebook and that sort of thing. And I don't know that I really ever engaged, but I took hope and inspiration from them. And it took a lot of convincing with my hairdresser, of course, because he didn't want me to stop coloring. We just started reducing the amount of color. We just kept backing down and backing down and backing down over a few years until finally I said, I think I'm done. Here we are today. So.
And there's many shades of gray. I mean, I see some white, I see silver, I see pewter in there.
My mother has a beautiful head of white hair, so I can only aspire to that one day.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is most interesting is the front, because it's brown. Where most people that have gray hair have a shock of white in the front.
Right.
I have a shock of brown in the front.
Yeah.
And then
it looks like it was actually done on purpose.
Yeah. And in fact, my hairdresser keeps saying, do you want me to just put highlights in that so it matches? I'm like, no, I don't want it to match. I love the quirkiness of it.
Right.
And other people will stop me on the street and say, I love your hair. I wish I had the courage to do it. I wish my hair would look like that when I was done. And I said, well, I didn't know what it was going to look like until I did it. I said, the beautiful thing about doing it is if you don't like what it looks like, you can always go back. There's always a bottle of dye on the shelf. Right. So there's no reason not to try it.
How long did it take you to transition from coloring your hair to where you're at now?
I'm going to say it was about 2 years. Yeah, probably about 2 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember about 2 years ago, I said to you, is that some silver hair that I'm seeing there?
Mm-hmm.
And I started seeing more and more of it, and I was kind of like silently rooting you on. Because I knew you would look great fully transitioned.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time I had some blonde highlights because what I was trying to do, they were like platinum blonde, because what I was trying to do was not have a deep line.
Yeah.
So I started doing some highlights on the length because I didn't want to cut it really short. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks.
Tell me about the glass ceiling.
Well, I don't know that I've ever acknowledged that it existed. I mentioned earlier that I was somewhat naive early in my career to the fact that there was such a thing. Today, after years of experience and seeing what others have struggled with and being witness to a lot of women's movements and things that have occurred, I recognize that for a lot of women, it's very real. This perception that they can only go so far in an organization, that others are holding them back, that being in a male-dominated society or industry prevents them from achieving their goals. For my part, I never had the perception. So it goes back to the idea that if you believe you can or believe you can't, it's probably true. I never had a perception that there was any reason I couldn't own my own business, that I couldn't compete in this industry at the highest level. And so there was no idea in my mind that stopped me. The only thing that could have stopped me would have been me. To women who struggle and say, I'm not happy where I am and I don't have opportunities, go somewhere else, honestly. And you know, that may be offensive to some, but go where you are most well valued. And if that place doesn't exist, create it. Start your own company. Do what I did. I just decided one day I'm going to start my own business because there wasn't one out there that I felt good about working for. So, you know, if you have a lot to offer and it's not being recognized where you are, go someplace that will recognize it and make your dreams come true. There's two ways to look at a situation when you're filled with fear. I actually had a paperweight at one point that I gave to my late partner that said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. All I mean by that is to say, believe in yourself. Your beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. Feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, fear doesn't mean that you can't do something. Have courage. Walk through the fear. Sometimes embracing the fear has been the most powerful thing for me to find success. I was afraid to go back to graduate school at 40 years of age. And I did it, and it's been truly one of the greatest experiences of my life. I was afraid to run this company by myself. I just plain didn't want to. I didn't want to do it. I was hurt. I was sad. I was disappointed. Things didn't go the way I had hoped that they would go. And I just didn't want to do it. But other people believed that I could, and I did it for them. Then I believed that I could. I guess what I would say to anybody who's struggling with what's next is follow the path as it lays in front of you. Be open to the opportunities. I never imagined growing up when I put my trash out at the curb on Sunday night and it miraculously disappeared on Monday morning, that one day I was going to be what people affectionately call the queen of garbage. I have been in this industry for a really long time and today am a leader. And it all started with, I showed up one day, I met some friends and they said, hey, are you doing anything? I said, no, I just graduated college. Don't know what I want to do. Haven't figured it out. My mom's on me to get a full-time job. And they said, well, we have friends who just started a trash company and they need somebody to go out on the street and do sales. And that's where it started when I was 22. Today, I am an employer. I am a responsible partner to many clients. I'm a good friend and a successful business person. So you just don't know where it's going to take you, but just do the next thing that's in front of you and follow the path. My name is Judy Ward, and I'm the CEO of Advanced Enviro Systems.